Good morning, Ethan, and welcome to this lesson on official stats and how crime is recorded officially in the UK. So your first task is going to be a do now reflective task which involves interleaving. You have three questions on there. What is primary socialization? What is secondary? And what is the marketization of education? So pause the video, have a go at answering these questions, and we'll review and discuss your or the possible points in which you could have written down. Right. Now that you've done that, your definition for what primary socialization is should be along the lines of a process in which occurs during during the ages of 5 to 8 or younger. And this is where a child will learn the attitudes, values, and the actions appropriate to individuals as members of a particular society. It's also a process in which they learn valuable or key skills such as writing, communication, amongst other things. But these are some examples of what they could also be learning. But essentially, it is a process in which they learn the attitudes, values, and skills and actions appropriate to individuals as part of a particular society. Now, if you compare that to secondary socialization, that is when, it's very similar in the sense where it's a process of learning, but it's done in order for the child to adopt appropriate behavior and mannerisms as being a member of, a much larger society. So an example of a agent of secondary socialization, that would be education, that would be the workplace, that would be religion. These are all different forms of secondary socialization where they teach them more values and more rules and more expectations which they're expected to adopt as time progresses. An example of a agent of primary socialization would be the family. But these are the differences in which you need to be sort of familiar with and understand. Lastly, the next question is, what is marketization of education? Now, it sort of gives you a clue, in the word marketization, but it's referred to as a trend within the educational policy in the 1980s, and this is when schools were encouraged to compete with each other, similar to a business rather than an actual educational institute. So they had the notion of the introduction of the league tables, where you were able to see where each school ranked with regards to GCSEs and A levels. Schools began to have open evenings in a way in which it was meant to sort of show off the resources and the abilities of each school and the benefits of each school. Prospectuses. Also, the idea of kind of parentocracy, where the parents had the ability to decide which school they would go to based on these sort of based on the sort of information in which they had. So again, it's a notion that schools became a bit of a marketplace for parents, and each school would compete with each school to get the enrollment of a particular child. And bear in mind, the more children schools would enroll, the more money they would get from the government. So it was all about recruitment in that sort of sense. Right. So the title for today is official statistics. You have your definition or your language for learning, which is on the top right hand side, which I would like you to write down. After you've done that, you are going to be looking at the table bottom right and answering the questions on the bottom left. So the highest percentage of recorded crimes in England and Wales, 2006, which is going to be your bronze. Your silver is the second lowest percentage, and you're going to work your way through bronze, silver, and gold. And lastly, the were there more offences drug related or burglary related in 2006 and 2007? So pause the video, and I'll give you a moment to answer these questions, and we'll reflect on it in a moment. Okay. Now, if we look at the first question is asking us the highest percentage of recorded crimes in England and Wales. That is going to be theft and handling stolen goods. So that's got a 36% rate of recorded crime in the UK, which again is quite a bit if you consider the rate of it. What was the second lowest percentage? We can see criminal damage. And lastly, were more drug offences or burglary recorded? It would be burglary. So we've got 11% and a 4%. So that's a 7% difference between the two. So again, quite interesting facts. It would be interesting to see as to what the facts are today. But it would probably be along somewhat of the same lines. There probably will be an increase in violence in that sort of sense. But theft and handling stolen goods has always been a prominent crime within the UK. It's always been very, very common and highly occurring. Now, why do sociologists use official stats? So these are the points in which you need to write down. They provide us with useful data on crime. So government, the police, and other members of parliament, policymakers, sociologists, general members of public, they use this information to highlight or to identify what issues are within society and what things need to be addressed. So if there has been a spike or a rise in a particular crime, this data is useful because we can recognize that trend or pattern and possibly identify causes and implement measures to prevent it from reoccurring or being at this rate or decreasing the actual occurrence of it in the future. If you look at number 2, it says they provide a cheap and easily available resource. That is true. Anyone can access this data. You can go online and look at the official stats of your area. We did this in class, and what I would like you to do, I'll put a task on Show My Homework which relates to it, where you can actually find out the rate of crime in your particular area this month. They can show change over time, which is really, really important. And again, crime will always have a response from the police. It will always have a response from the government, and you can measure the effectiveness of the police and of the government with the rate of crime. It is said, or people often say, that our government is a little bit, what word shall we use? In this instance, not necessarily neglectful, but they may not have responded in the most effective of ways in relation to the rise in violent crime in UK or London. So there's been a really, really big rise, and it is a really concerning issue for a lot of people, and often the police and the government are questioned and are judged quite harshly when it comes to how well are they dealing with it, especially with there being cuts in police and so many other issues. They can compare crime between areas. So again, this has been really, really powerful because you're able to see as to what area is succeeding in a particular area of crime, what area is struggling, and if there are certain methods adopted by particular constabularies. A constabulary is going to be the police force, and every police force is going to be somewhat different in each area. Kind of knowledge can be shared and so on. They contain large amount of information, and is combined with the results of victim surveys and self-report studies to estimate the real rate of crime. So again, data can be merged together. So often with particular kinds of statistics, they may be missing or they may have its own weaknesses, and this weakness could be kind of improved, or that gap can be filled with different ways of actually reporting crime. And we'll talk about what victim surveys are and self-report studies are and how these can benefit the recording rate of crime. So what problems can you identify with official statistics? Now, this is where you're going to need to write down the points that I say, as they aren't necessarily going to be on the PowerPoint. But one main issue is going to be the dark figure of crime. Now, the dark figure of crime relates to a crime which is not reported. As crime which isn't reported doesn't, provide a false image of reality when it comes to, what is actually happening on the street. So there are different kind of crimes which are less likely or most likely to be reported, and it doesn't mean that crime doesn't occur. So crime is occurring, but it's actually not being reported. So, for example, domestic violence isn't reported anywhere near enough in relation to how often it's happening. If we look at drug-related crime, where if, let's say, a drug dealer is robbed by another drug dealer, even though they are both engaged in criminal activity, that is still a crime. In general, people may not report minor crimes such as criminal damage, or let's say theft or shoplifting. Some people may choose not to report this crime, and this can actually skew or affect the validity of the statistics because they're meant to portray the real reality of what's happening in the world. So the dark field crime, if you think of an iceberg, okay, so if you know what, so an iceberg is a large piece of ice which you'll find in kind of the North or the South Pole, shall we say, and you only see the tip of the iceberg. You only see a very, very small portion, and you think that's how big the actual iceberg is. However, underneath the water submerged is a much larger piece connected to this piece, and that is the true image, or that is the true size of the iceberg, which we cannot see. Same with crime and official statistics, because that relies on the individual reporting it to the police. There is so much which is underreported that we only see a small portion of official statistics. Now, another weakness of official statistics is going to be the idea that, the idea that some constabularies, they actually can misreport, or they choose not to report certain crimes. So one example is the constabulary of Nottinghamshire. So Nottinghamshire police, they actually do, or they would record theft which was a value of under £10. Now, not many other constabularies do that. So one big issue is that you can find a difference in how certain parts of the country deal with certain crime, and that paints, again, a very different image. So in one part of the country, they're recording crime or theft which is a value of under £10, and you'll find other constabularies don't. So other parts of the country do not. Now, what that does is it causes a spike in the rate of crime which is being recorded in relation to theft, and it makes it seem like Nottinghamshire had a real problem with theft, when in reality other parts of the country do as well, but they are just not recording it. So again, that is a really big issue when it comes to how true the data actually is in reflection to what crime is being committed, or what crimes are being committed in society. Now, if we look at victim surveys, and this is one of the ways in which victim surveys plug in or try and fill in the gaps of official statistics. Now, this is when people will be contacted and they'll be asked about their experiences of crime, and the survey again measures crime by asking members of the public, such as yourself, if they had experienced crime in any way over the last 12 months. In this way, the survey records all types of crimes experienced by people, including those crimes they may not have reported to the police. Now, bear in mind, they're also allowed to be confidential. They do not have to give any details. So if there is some concerns about, people, not being, forthcoming with information, that is sort of negated, and that's sort of helped by, again, promising confidentiality. So it's important that the government hears from these people, about the rates of crime in which they've experienced, and also it will help provide a better picture of crime in the last year or so. And this again is meant to help fill in the gaps of knowledge that some people or the government may have with what is actually happening. So this confidentiality helps quite a bit. And an interesting fact is, with victim surveys, they actually show a 3% increase in crime in the UK, whereas official statistics shows a 2% decrease in crime, which shows you how flawed or how reliant they are on each other. As if we simply rely on official stats, it would suggest that there is a 2% decrease in crime, but if we looked at victim surveys, there would actually be a 3% increase in crime, which shows a real problem, again, like I said, with the elements of data. Right, uses and limitations. So it includes unreported crimes, so it gives information on offences that are not included in stats to the police. It allows trends, again, for particular crimes to be identified, and it helps policymakers introduce or innovate ideas and policies to tackle crime. Now, the one issue is that it doesn't include the full range of crimes, including murder, and this is what is reported by the police. And respondents' memories can also be inaccurate, so they may not mention trivial crimes, or they may lie about having reported a crime to the police. So often some people can do, some people can still elaborate or exaggerate what crimes are or what crimes have occurred. And this again paints a very, very inaccurate image of what the reality is when it comes to society. Now, that is going to be the end of today's lesson, recapping on what kind of self-report studies are, victim surveys are, and what official stats are. What you are going to do tomorrow is we're going to be going over self-report studies, and we're going to be having a go at answering some practice questions. So again, I hope you've made notes throughout the video. If you haven't, just go back to where you need to go back to on the video and do what you need to do. But if you have any questions, please comment on Show My Homework. I would like you to take a picture of your notes and upload it onto Show My Homework so that I can see you have completed the task. Thank you.